The AI lie. How tech companies are using robots to make your salary invisible. The raise meeting lasted 6 minutes. My manager slid a laptop across the table. A dashboard blinked green. Productivity surplus, 118%. You're doing great, she said, but the tools handled the lift. The number that mattered wasn't my performance, it was the gap. Somewhere, that 18% turned into savings. Not for me. Billions are pouring into AI. Output climbs. Paychecks stall. Who pockets the difference? Careers stall at invisible ceilings. Promotions slip into vapor. Ladders collapse into 2 rungs. Follow the money. Decode the playbook. See how it's engineered, and how to fight back. If you felt your effort rise while recognition stalls, you're not imagining it. To see where pay disappeared, we go back to the first quiet shift. The quiet shift, tasks, not jobs. It didn't start with mass layoffs. It started with tasks slipping away. A call center rep got a co-pilot that drafted replies faster than she could type. Marketing ops got templates that built campaigns in minutes. FP&A picked up forecasting models that reconciled data overnight. Customer success watched an auto-summarizer turn hour-long calls into bullet points. Work felt lighter until the reviews came. HR had new language. Roles weren't being simplified, they were evolving. Teams weren't squeezed, they were leveraging efficiencies. The efficiency dividend would flow back into the business. Translation: the work got easier on paper, so the pay stayed put, and the saved dollars were earmarked in budgets before reviews even happened. Get this, titles quietly changed while job content ballooned. A coordinator processed twice the volume with an AI queue, but the title stayed coordinator. The justification lived in the software. If the tool did the heavy lifting, the person was facilitating, not owning. That single word knocked 10 to 15% off expected pay bands in many internal comp guides and market surveys. Here's where the math started to drift. Productivity rose. Finance booked the savings. Salaries sat still. Meanwhile, managers promised career acceleration because people could operate at a higher level. But the ladder didn't move, only the floor did. The new baseline became yesterday's stretch goal. In call centers, the pattern showed up first. Average handle time dropped as assistants surfaced answers mid-call. Supervisors cheered. A month later, scheduling software tightened shifts, arguing that the same team could cover more volume. Overtime vanished. Take-home pay dipped. The win became a wedge. Marketing ops saw the same thing, but shinier. Generative tools drafted variations, wrote subject lines, even suggested audiences. Fewer late nights before launches. Then budgets shifted. Since execution is streamlined, we'll reclassify this role as production supported. The promotion to manager floated one more cycle out. Finance and FP&A had their own twist. Dashboards stitched data together, reconciled variances, flagged anomalies. Close cycles shortened. The reward wasn't headcount growth, it was a hiring freeze. Vacant roles became absorbed by tooling. The team carried more scope without the leverage of a bigger title or raise. Customer success discovered the quietest shift of all. AI summaries freed reps to handle more accounts. The new capacity turned into larger books of business, not higher compensation. The pitch was impact. The reality was utilization. When renewal season hit, the metric that mattered was accounts per rep, not value delivered per account. Why was it hidden? Because the automation sat behind badges and logins. Invisible prompts, automatic routing, background classifiers. Nothing that looked like a robot rolling into the office. The interface didn't change, the baseline did. If you complained, the answer was the tool is doing the easy stuff, so you can be more strategic. But the roadmap never held space for that strategy. Microstory, Mia, a marketing coordinator, loved the new editor. It turned rough notes into polished copy. Her publish rate doubled. That quarter, her review said, "Excellent delivery with AI assistance." The next quarter, her manager raised her weekly quota to match her new speed. A year later, her pay hadn't budged. Her scope had. Meanwhile, HR perfected the rebrand. Job descriptions broadened. Own, coordinate, or leverage replaced build, analyze, and decide. The verbs shifted from accountability to orchestration. The narrower your verb, the easier it was to place you in a lower band with AI support. People started interviewing for roles that sounded bigger, then got leveled down based on tooling leverage. No one could point to the moment the ladder lost a rung. It never made a sound. But slash therefore is the engine of this shift. Productivity goes up, therefore savings are booked. Savings are booked, therefore salaries flatten. Salaries flatten, therefore people chase promotions. Promotions shrink, therefore turnover rises. Turnover rises, therefore the story becomes we can't grow comp while we stabilize. The loop protects itself. Sectors didn't move in sync, but they rhymed. In moderation, models filtered 60% of low-risk cases, leaving humans to handle edge cases at higher speed. Pay didn't rise for the harder work. It stayed pegged to the average case, now automated away. In sales ops, routing got sharper, capacity rose, and leadership decided to pause backfills. In compliance, pre-screens cleared routine filings, so teams took on more entities without re-leveling. The argument always came wrapped in opportunity. With the tools, you can cover more scope. You'll get exposure. This is career acceleration. Exposure without authority is just more accountability. Acceleration without compensation is just speed. Another microstory. Ken in FP&A used to spend late nights reconciling intercompany charges. An agent now spits out a clean ledger by 7 a.m. He rebuilt the variance deck to highlight driver-level insights. His director praised the deck, then assigned him 2 more business units because the heavy lift is gone. Ken's new title? Same. His raise? 2%. While teams clapped for time saved, finance pre-booked the savings. That's the pivot no one announces. The efficiency dividend moved from a vague promise to a line item. If you wanted a share, you had to fight upstream against budgets already closed and ROI already committed. And when you asked, the answer was market conditions. Markets didn't write that dashboard comment. People did. Here's the tell. Role evolution. If you hear it, ask for the verbs. If they're soft, coordinate, leverage, facilitate, your ceiling is already moving. The shift isn't a storm. It's a tide. And it's still rising. The corporate math. Productivity without pay. While teams were celebrating time saved, finance was already doing math most employees never see. The CFO's job is simple to describe and brutal in practice. Hit margin targets. When AI lifts output without raising payroll, that lift isn't treated as shared success. It's treated as operating leverage. The gains route first to guidance, not to paychecks. Here's how it moves through the system. Step 1, headcount freeze. If tools expand capacity, the right sizing move is to pause backfills. Vacancies become efficiency capture. The work doesn't vanish, it gets absorbed. Step 2, shrink the merit pool. If baseline performance rises thanks to tooling, management argues they don't need a larger raise budget to reward normal execution. Step 3, vacancy capture turns permanent via position control reviews. Those dollars never come back to the team, they roll up as margin. Inside the budget model, it looks clean. Cost per unit falls. Output per FTE rises. Compensation as a percentage of revenue ticks down. That line is a trophy on the internal dashboard. It feeds into investor language about productivity gains and operating discipline. You can hear it on earnings calls. The subtext, do more with the same people, then do the same with fewer people. Shareholders react to guidance, not internal morale. If a company tells the street they can raise earnings without raising revenue, that narrative commands a premium. Buybacks amplify it. Turn savings into fewer shares, and per share metrics climb faster. Executive comp plans are often indexed to EBITDA margin, free cash flow, and total shareholder return. AI savings juice all 3. The incentive to hold raises flat isn't abstract, it's in the payout tables. Now the composite figures that never make the slide deck. Your company books a 12% productivity lift in a business unit. Tickets closed faster, cycle times shorter, fewer errors. The merit pool across the org? 3%, in line with market. That 9-point delta doesn't evaporate. It consolidates as profit, strengthens guidance, and funds buybacks or debt paydown. Executives present it as prudence. Workers feel it as a ceiling. A microstory from a support org makes it real. A regional team hit every target after a tooling rollout. Response times down 25%, backlog cleared, customer satisfaction up. The update meeting was all smiles. 2 weeks later, the comp note dropped. Cost controls require us to maintain a balanced merit cycle. Nobody got more than standard. The team lead asked if exceptional results mattered. Finance said, they do. They help us meet commitments. The math only works because measurement got rewritten. Once AI assistance becomes normal, yesterday's stretch becomes today's baseline. That lets leadership claim no extraordinary performance and keep the merit pool tight. Meanwhile, finance already baked the productivity gain into the operating plan. If they give it back as raises, they miss the target they promised investors. Under the hood, there are 3 quiet levers that lock it in. First, unit cost KPIs replace human-centered metrics. Leaders track cost per ticket, cost per lead, cost per dollar of revenue. If those drop, it signals efficiency. Second, comp to revenue becomes a scoreboard. If that ratio falls, it's reported up as a win. Third, the vacancy ledger. Every unfilled role is counted as savings and applied to margins, not to stretch pay for the people absorbing the work. Procurement plays a part too. Vendor ROI calculators for AI are built on labor savings. The business case is FTE equivalence and throughput lift, with dollar signs attached. When the CFO signs, those savings are scheduled into the operating plan. That means the money is claimed before value is realized. When the pilot succeeds, there's no bonus line for the team. There's a clawback of the budget to hit the ROI promised on paper. You can hear it in the language on calls. We're seeing sustained operating leverage as we scale our AI investments. We're confident in expanding margins through productivity. These aren't throwaway phrases. They're signals that compensation will lag output by design. The plan needs that lag. Even the 3% myth has a function. It anchors expectations. If market is 3, any push above 5 needs an exception memo. If productivity quietly rose by double digits, the myth absorbs the difference. And if inflation cooled, leadership frames restraint as responsibility. We're protecting jobs by avoiding overspending on compensation. Notice the frame. Your raise is a risk, their savings are safety. This is why business units that overperform don't see their share. Bonus pools at the top expand when margin targets are exceeded. Operating leaders' present discipline spend as leadership. The cycle rewards withholding. When someone protests, why not share gains with the teams that created them? The answer points to the street. We guided to margin expansion. Translation: we already promised your raise to investors. But that math depends on one more shift. Measurement that treats AI-lifted output as normal. And that's where the new regime takes over. The new measurement regime. The math only works if the yardstick changes. And it did quietly everywhere. Telemetry wrapped around tasks that never used to be measured. Tickets closed, prompts fired, drafts generated, commits merged, emails sent, meetings joined, minutes spoken, even the seconds between a message and your reply. The dashboards didn't just report work, they governed it. Utilization 2.0 replaced the old calendar grind. In the past, you showed up, delivered, and your manager judged the outcome. Now, every minute became a metric. Agents logged which prompts you used. Editors tracked how many AI suggestions you accepted. Engineering tools tallied code written, code reviewed, code suggested by the model, and how quickly you clicked approve. In sales, your pipeline health included how often you let the AI rewrite your outreach. Enablement tied tool usage to performance, so non-usage looked like non-performance. Goalposts moved without a memo. The baseline output rose to match AI assistance. Meets expectations used to track steady, dependable delivery. After rollout, meets meant clearing the AI-enabled bar, faster cycle times, fewer errors, more throughput. The same person, same skill, same care, relabeled as average because the machine shaved minutes. Calibration cycles codified it. Managers sat in rooms comparing last year's exceeds to this year's meets, charts, and called it consistency. What nobody talked about: the gap between human judgment and system metrics. The tool said you responded in 4 minutes instead of 9. Great. It didn't log the nuance in the call where you kept a client from churning. The summarizer captured bullet points. It missed tone, fear, history. But the dashboard didn't reward tone. It rewarded volume. The more you shipped, the better the graph. The graph drove ratings. A microstory from product shows the turn. Lila shipped specs that used to take a week. With an assistant, she drafted them in a day, then spent 4 days chasing edge cases. Her dashboard looked stellar, spec throughput doubled. During calibration, the comment read, "Strong velocity, opportunity to accelerate strategic scope." She asked what strategic scope meant. Bigger bets, they said. 2 weeks later, her base didn't move. The grade held at meets. Meanwhile, calibration guidelines were refreshed to reflect modern tooling. Phrases like fully leverages platform capabilities showed up beside the performance bar. If you didn't use the tools enough, you landed in development needed, even if your outcomes were strong. Compliance with the system became part of your grade. Tool adoption wasn't a suggestion. It was a gate. Managers got new dashboards too. They could rank their team by assist utilization, commit approval latency, prompt diversity, knowledge article reuse. These numbers rolled up into a leader score and sometimes discount tiers in enterprise licenses. If their team lagged on adoption, they got flagged in staff meetings. Suddenly, the boss's incentive matched the software's goal. More tool usage, more measurable output, fewer exceptions. Exceptions were where your judgment lived. The goalposts didn't just move forward, they moved higher every quarter. Baseline creep became normal. If your team hit a 5-minute response time after rollout, next quarter the target was 4. If your error rate fell to 1%, next quarter it needed to be under 1. The model's updates were cited as the reason. The tool improved, our expectations should too. The staircase had no landing. In this regime, meets expectations turned into a moving ceiling. Raises tied to exceeds. But exceeding meant beating an AI-inflated baseline while also demonstrating strategic impact. That phrase floated like a balloon, always above you, always drifting. Strategy headcount was shrinking, but strategy expectations moved down the ladder. You were told to be more strategic with less authority, then told your impact wasn't strategic enough for the next band. The most painful part arrived in end-of-year reviews. Employees read phrases like strong delivery aided by platform, operates effectively with AI, scale enabled by tools, and learned that the credit was shared with software they didn't own. Shared credit turned into diluted compensation. Accountability stayed personal. Miss a target, and you missed it. Beat a target, and the model helped. Psychologically, this erodes agency and fuels quiet quitting, the effort to reward link breaks. Behind the scenes, HRIS teams wired ratings to distributions. Forced curves capped the number of exceeds, no matter how much the tools boosted output. Calibration committees reviewed stacks of metrics that made teams look interchangeable. If everyone hit the new bar, nobody exceeded. That justified tight merit pools. It also justified moving people around bands without moving pay. Broad role inside range. Microstory, Nav, and Engineer had been exceeds for 2 years. Gen AI rolled into code review. He started mentoring the model, writing prompts that caught regressions. His PR count rose, his bug rate fell. During calibration, the head of engineering said, "Everyone's numbers are up with the assistant. We have to distinguish on impact." Next cycle, Nav got meets. His mortgage didn't care about comparative impact. The quiet trick was measurement scope. Telemetry captured visible work, so visible work became the work. Deep thinking, slow negotiations, careful coaching, low telemetry, low score. Teams adapted by shipping more fragments. Drafts multiplied. Noise rose. Ironically, the model learned from that noise and flooded the channel with more drafts. The dashboard applauded. Customers didn't. There's another lever. Time to value. Vendors sold leaders on metrics they could prove: throughput, handle time, cycle time. Those became North Stars. Procurement locked them into service-level agreements. Managers pointed at them to justify expectations. When the company met them, finance claimed victory. When you asked for a raise, the answer circled back. We're at steady state performance. Steady state meant the goal moved, not that you stood still. This was the moment everything changed. Measurement stopped describing work and started deciding worth. And with expectations reset by dashboards, the ladder itself began to shrink. The vanishing middle, career ladders cut short. With expectations reset by dashboards, the next step was structural. The ladder didn't break, it was redesigned. Automation compressed roles, stitched scopes together, and quietly removed the rungs that used to carry people from competent to credible to leader. Titles stayed, but the steps between them thinned until they were air. The first sign was the player coach. Teams heard it like a compliment: trusted, experienced, empowered. In practice, it meant absorbing a manager's responsibilities without a manager's pay. You'd own a book, run a stand-up, mentor juniors, and still hit individual metrics. Span of control climbed. True senior seats didn't. Leadership called it agility. HR called it broadened scope. Finance called it the same salary. Promotion criteria drifted upward as headcount drifted downward. Strategy moved from a department to a requirement. The write-up said demonstrate strategic impact, while the org chart erased roles that granted strategic authority. You were asked to influence without resources, align without budget, drive change without ownership. When reviews landed, the verdict was familiar. Not yet operating at strategic level. This mismatch triggers burnout and learned helplessness. The more you try, the more the bar drifts. Microstory: Dana, a senior specialist in compliance, crushed 3 consecutive audits with help from pre-screening tools. Her manager added cross-border filings, then incident response, labeling each as expanded scope. Twice she was told the next cycle would be her promotion to manager. Twice the structure shifted. 2 teams merged, a director took on both, and the manager slot vanished. Dana got a spotlight in the all-hands deck. Her title stayed put. The middle disappeared because automation made intermediate look redundant on paper. If an assistant could elevate a junior to draft acceptable work, and a director could use dashboards to review at scale, why pay for a mid-level gatekeeper? The answer used to be craft and coaching. The system replaced coaching with enablement modules and tracked completion. Craft became templates. The apprenticeship broke quietly. Mobility took a hit, then got a new label: skills gaps. Tools changed workflows faster than learning budgets changed reality. To move up, employees were told to upskill on their own time: prompt engineering, data hygiene, risk taxonomies, new platforms. Courses earned badges. Badges earned thanks. The rungs didn't return. Without sponsorship and headcount, the badge decorated the ceiling. The consequence arrived sooner than anyone admitted. Ceilings hit 5 to 7 years earlier. Roles that traditionally topped out in the early 30s now flattened in the late 20s. People chased lateral moves hoping for a fresh lane. Many found the same architecture: wide bands, vague titles, and criteria tilting toward impact that required authority they didn't have. Unknown to them, across town, HRIS codified the shrinkage. Job architecture rewrites broadened families and widened bands. Title inflation hid pay stagnation. Senior meant range midpoint. Principal meant you were doing senior plus cross-team glue, without the formal lever. The wider the band, the easier to argue you were appropriately placed, even as your scope ballooned. Managers weren't villains, they were rationing oxygen. Forced distributions capped exceeds, so even high performers in a flattened middle couldn't clear the bar en masse. Leaders shielded a few with scarce promotions, then spread growth opportunities to keep the rest engaged. Growth meant responsibilities, not raises. The currency was exposure again. Microstory: Jules joined customer success as an associate. With AI summaries and playbooks, she grew her portfolio from 30 accounts to 90. Twice she took on interim, team lead duties. Twice she trained the new hire slated to manage the team. External candidates with prior manager titles, justified by span experience. Jules' review praised her managerial readiness. Her pay moved 2%. Her title remained senior associate. Span changes hit attrition. When a mid-level left, their scope folded into neighbors' roles. No backfill, just redistribution. The effect compounded. Fewer mid-levels to mentor juniors, fewer projects that could be safely delegated upward, fewer chances to demonstrate leadership without burning out. Burnout then became a performance narrative. Sustained pace management needed. Promotion packets got longer and less concrete. The checklist included cross-functional influence, measurable business impact beyond your lane, and enterprise thinking. The tools tracked throughput, they couldn't prove influence. So influence required stories and sponsors. In lean orgs, sponsors protected a shrinking circle. Everyone else cycled through almost there. Meanwhile, strategic headcount shrank. Program managers were reclassified as enablement, then consolidated. Business analysts became embedded operators, then absorbed into product ops. Each consolidation collapsed a rung. Without those waypoints, juniors jumped directly into roles that looked senior and learned in place under pressure. Some thrived. Many plateaued early, labeled solid, not scale. The paradox was brutal. The more assistive the tools, the harder it was to justify a transition role. Either you could already operate at the next level, or the tools should help you get there in role. But access without authority didn't grow judgment. That's what the middle taught: how to own outcomes when stakes rose. The dashboards couldn't show that. so the system stopped paying for it. Churn became the release valve. People left for titles elsewhere, sometimes at lower comp, but with a new rung unlocked. Others stayed and waited for a backfill that wouldn't come. Leadership framed departures as healthy movement. HR called it refresh. Finance booked the savings. Teams absorbed the work. The latter didn't vanish everywhere. In regulated areas, signatures still mattered. In revenue roles with hard targets, proof traveled better. But across broad swaths of the org, the middle turned into a mirage, visible on career sites, missing in headcount plans. The cultural script still promised growth. The system delivered scope. Scope without structure was the ceiling, newly lowered and hard-coded. The HRIS playbook, how it's hard-coded. While managers talked culture, the real ceiling got installed inside systems. Quiet edits to job architecture, bans, and benchmarks that made restraint look like policy. HRIS wasn't writing memos, they were writing rules. Once the rules changed, everything downstream felt reasonable. Start with bans. In the rewrite, titles broadened and pay bands widened. A specialist could span early career to near senior. A senior stretched from solid contributor to informal lead. On paper, that gave flexibility. In practice, it gave cover. If your scope expanded, HR could say, "You're still within band." Movement became positional, not financial. New hires felt the pinch first. Recs included a phrase that looked harmless. With AI support, recruiters used it to slot candidates one step lower. The logic: the role's effective complexity decreased because tooling carried routine lift. Offers arrived at the lower step pending demonstrated strategic impact, which, conveniently, required a promotion cycle to validate. Day one, you were already behind. Market pricing vendors updated benchmarks to reflect AI-adjusted roles. That meant datasets quietly mixed roles that used assistive tools with legacy roles, then smoothed compensation down. Reports came back saying the market cleared lower for roles, with platform leverage. Leaders took that as neutral truth. It wasn't neutral. It was engineered through definitions and job family relabeling that shifted verbs from ownership to enablement. Job architecture rewrites did the rest. Families merged. Distinctions between analyst, operations, and coordinator blurred into business operations. The verbs and descriptions softened. Own and decide became coordinate and enable. Those verbs were levers. Enablement sounded important, yet placed you one band down because decision rights sit with strategy. Strategy headcount, meanwhile, was shrinking. Forced distributions capped the top. Performance systems enforced a limit on exceeds, regardless of uplift. That cap bled into comp merit guidelines tied percentage increases to rating buckets. If only 10% could exceed, only 10% could break the ceiling, even if tools doubled throughput across the board. The policy converted real gains into averages. There was a transparency show to make it palatable. Companies published ranges to comply with laws and boost brand equity. But the range wasn't your placement. Leveling was opaque, and band position was protected data. Employees saw a number from X to Y. HR saw you at the 43rd percentile with room to grow in band. The room was real. The key was missing. Microstory. Priya negotiated hard for a senior data role. The JD listed model ownership and cross-team influence. During leveling, HR flagged AI pipeline support and reclassified the role as senior production supported. The offer came one step lower with a note: efficiency tooling offsets complexity. The letter cited platform leverage as rationale. 6 months later, she was doing the work in the original JD, minus the pay. Vendors fed the narrative. ROI decks defined success as FTE equivalence and cost per output reduction. Procurement locked SLAs around throughput. Those assumptions flowed straight into headcount plans. HRIS then aligned job families to reflect steady-state lift. In English, the system assumed the tool worked, so salaries assumed you needed less. Another lever, comp ratios. Leaders tracked comp ratio to midpoint as a health metric. Widen the band, and most people fall further from midpoint overnight, without a cut. That creates years of within-range progression to keep you moving without crossing bands. Merit budgets stretch further when midpoint moves away. Promotion panels changed, too. They added leveling checkpoints that weighted enterprise impact and signature authority. Signature authority is where this gets sharp. If the system records that the tool drafts, the manager approves, and legal signs, your contribution lives in a middle step that doesn't grant signatures. Without signatures, you're operating through influence, which reads heroic in a review and junior in a leveling guide. The cover story framed it as fairness. Consistent titles across teams, clarity for growth, pay equity via standardized ranges. The profit came from placement. If you broaden titles and widen bands, you can absorb more work without bumping pay. If you redefine roles with AI, you can recruit strong talent at lower steps because the job requires less net lift. Microstory. Arturo received an offer from a large platform company. He expected mid-band for Program Manager 2. The comp partner walked him through a skills matrix that awarded points. Tooling proficiency scored high, signature authority scored low. Because the program relied on AI workflows and approvals sat with the director, Arturo's total dropped below the mid-band threshold. He took the job. 3 quarters later, he trained 2 new hires leveled higher, legacy recs that hadn't been reclassified yet. Forced distributions tightened again under a new label, performance mix. Leaders got quarterly nudges. Reduce exceeds to align with enterprise distribution. If a manager tried to break the cap, the system kicked an exception to HRBP and finance. Exceptions drained political capital. Most managers saved them for retention emergencies. Day-to-day excellence stayed in meets, and meets carried 2 to 3%. There was one more quiet gear, vacancy capture codified in workflow. When someone left, the position control didn't default to replacement. It triggered a review. Could the scope be redistributed with AI support? If yes, finance captured the dollars, HRIS updated span guidance, and the REQ closed. A month later, the team received an email celebrating operating leverage. The budget never flowed back to merit. Transparency optics kept pace. Pay ranges posted. Career sites showed shiny ladders. Internally, employees got dashboards of skills progress. The dashboard couldn't show band placement, comp ratio, or exception thresholds. It showed badges. People collected badges while their percentile position in band drifted lower as bands widened again at midyear. Offer letters started naming the tools. This role benefits from the company's efficiency platform. That sentence looked like a perk. It was a clause. If you challenged comp mid-cycle, HR pointed to the letter and the family guide. Role is scoped with efficiency support, appropriate banding applied. For candidates, translate this as lower initial leveling and slower progression, unless you negotiate signature authority or revenue-linked scope up front. The playbook worked because it was boring, policy names, matrix cells, comp cycles. But boring is binding. Once it's hard-coded, managers can want to pay you more and still be out of keys. The system smiles and says, within range. The range keeps moving. The innovation cover story. While HRIS hard-coded restraint, the story the company told the world sounded noble. The line was clean. AI augments workers. It frees them to be creative, strategic, human. Press releases paired smiling employees with glowing dashboards. Leaders said partner, co-pilot, multiplier. Internally, memos read differently. Reduce run rate, capture FTE equivalence, lock operating leverage. PR amplified the bright side. Upskilling grants got splashy blog posts. Photo ops with certificates, quotes about lifelong learning. Budgets, however, flowed to enterprise licenses and buybacks. Training stipends covered short courses. The tool line item dwarfed them by orders of magnitude. The effect wasn't invisible, just misdirected. People saw classes. Finance saw software amortization and a cleaner earnings slide. Talent branding stitched it together. Career acceleration became a tagline. Teams were told they'd move faster, touch bigger problems, rise sooner. Meanwhile, attrition backfilled gaps. Churn wasn't a bug, it was a feature. When people left, the narrative was mobility. When roles closed, the narrative was efficiency. Between the two, the latter stayed short. Vendors reinforced the chorus. Case studies highlighted happier employees, better customer experiences, and time back to focus on what matters. Their ROI calculators told the real story. The inputs were hours saved, seats displaced, throughput guaranteed. Savings were denominated in labor. Slides showed curves bending down for cost per ticket, cost per lead, cost per claim. That's what procurement bought. That's what leaders promised upstream. Workers applauded tools, because at first, the tools helped. Drafts got easier. Data reconciled itself. Summaries cut meeting time. The appreciation was honest. Then the help became the reason raises froze. With assistive tooling, your capacity increased. Compensation remains aligned to role level. The sentence arrived in emails across companies like it had been copy-pasted from a template, because many firms adopted similar HRIS language tied to ROI assumptions. Microstory, a product org ran a hackathon. Trophies, hoodies, and all-hands shout-out. The winning team shipped an agent that trimmed QA cycles by 35%. 2 sprints later, a hiring freeze memo landed. Headcount would rebalance to reflect automation gains. The trophy sat on a shelf as the team stretched stand-ups to cover the work of 2 unfilled roles. Nobody was malicious. The sequence was baked. The cover story needed rituals. Leaders recorded videos from demo floors, standing beside kiosks where assistants wrote emails in 5 languages. They said, "This doesn't replace people, it removes drudgery." Meanwhile, the operating plan tagged categories for savings and outlined workforce efficiency goals. The drudgery didn't vanish, it moved. Humans handled edge cases at higher speed and lower recognition. The language got tight. Augment became a shield. If someone asked about layoffs, leaders replied, "We're augmenting, not replacing." But the spreadsheet aggregated the effect. Augmented teams absorbed more with the same or fewer people. Replacements didn't have to be announced as cuts. They could be delayed requisitions and quiet backfill denials. The result felt like stability on the outside and compression on the inside. PR highlighted scholarships and new certifications. Those programs mattered for many. They just didn't change comp mechanics. 100 badges don't move a band if the band is designed to absorb lift. Employees learn to smile on camera, then whisper after the shoot. Do we get credit for the work the tool scaled? The answer, you get impact. Impact untethered from pay. Vendor decks echoed leadership's optimism with a footnote. One slide sang about creativity. The appendix listed FTE equivalents. Legal reviewed those slides. Procurement negotiated volume discounts based on seats displaced scenarios. When pilots hit targets, finance clawed back budgets that had been unlocked. Bonuses didn't reference those clawbacks. They referenced margin. Case studies spread fast. A legal team trimmed contract review times with an AI redliner. The blog quoted counsel. "We can focus on judgment." Internally, the staffing model changed. Junior roles thinned. Senior counsel carried more approvals across more regions. Judgment expanded, headcount didn't. The post implied growth. The plan assumed substitution. Here's where the story turned sharp. Upskilling as solution to every concern. Worried about job security? Upskill. Stuck at a plateau? Upskill. The grants helped individuals. They also shifted responsibility onto workers. If you couldn't convert new capacity into strategic impact, the deficit became personal. The system didn't admit its own constraints, shrinking rungs, capped ratings, wide bands. It presented a mirror, learn faster. Another microstory. A moderation team celebrated a vendor's assistive classification. Leadership promised no job losses. 3 months later, attrition opened 5 seats. None were backfilled. The memo said, "We're achieving more with the same team." The team lead asked about burnout risk. The reply, "Leverage the tool further." Burnout went on a slide as change management. The cover story also relied on external noise. Thought leaders announced the age of human-AI collaboration. Panels debated ethics, creativity, purpose. Meanwhile, on earnings calls, CFOs said, "We are expanding margins as AI initiatives scale." 2 channels, 2 audiences, 1 plan. Investors got the math. Employees got the mission. The gap between them was the surplus. To be fair, not every leader hid the ball. Some pushed Gainsharing, fought for spot bonuses, carved exceptions for teams that created outsized value. They ran into the same scaffolding. Merit pools fixed, distributions capped, bands widened, vacancy capture automated. A generous manager could front-load recognition. The system reclaimed it over cycles. Why did the cover story work? Because it contained truth. The tools do remove tedium. They do open room for better work. The lie lived in the allocation. If that room fills with more volume, if the better work lacks authority, if the surplus routes to margins, then innovation becomes a brand for restraint. The story sells optimism. The spreadsheet books savings. Contracts, not slogans, reveal intent. SLAs, ROI assumptions, displacement models. Those documents write the future more bluntly than any keynote. Follow those promises, and you'll see where the surplus goes before it arrives. Inside the AI contracts, what vendors promise. Contracts, not slogans, write what happens next. The sales rep smiles through the demo, but the master services agreement and the statement of work shake your paycheck. In black and white, the promise is measurable: time to resolution, cost per ticket, cycle time reductions, and throughput guarantees. These aren't aspirations. They're service-level agreements with penalties. If the tool doesn't cut handle time by 20%, the vendor credits fees. If it does, procurement expects the business to book savings. That's the lever. Pricing quietly ties software to headcount. It shows up as FTE equivalence. A license that costs $X per seat is justified by displacing Y fraction of a full-time employee. The ROI calculator converts minutes saved into dollars, then totals seats displaced across a department. Legal pushes to phrase it carefully. Capacity unlocked. The appendix keeps the math blunt. 25 agents can handle the volume of 35. 10 salaries become savings on a slide the CFO signs before the pilot even runs, subject to internal position control and vacancy capture. Composites make it concrete. In legal review, the SOW lists drafting first-pass red lines, clause extraction, risk flagging. The SLA states turnaround under 4 hours for standard. Contracts. In support triage, the vendor commits to auto-classify 70% of inbound tickets, deflect 30% to self-service, and cut average handle time by 25%. In sales ops, the promise is lead scoring lift, routing accuracy, and proposal generation within minutes. Every line has an outcome the vendor will be judged on. Every outcome has a labor conversion baked in. Procurement locks those assumptions up front. During negotiation, they book savings against the next quarter's plan to justify the spend. That means the budget line for raises in the affected unit shrinks before anyone sees the tool. Once the pilot hits target, finance issues a budget alignment memo. Leaders feel the clawback. Open recs pause, backfills require CFO approval, and merit guidance tightens because efficiency realized. The team that helped the pilot succeed doesn't get a bonus pool. It gets a smaller hiring plan. Vendor decks tout 20 to 40% labor reduction as the selling point. They know what moves a deal. Slides show a waterfall: current spend, software cost, labor savings, and net impact to margin. It's framed as redeploy capacity. The case studies list headcount held flat for 12 months while volume grew. Internally, that phrase reads like a layoff you can't see. Different words, same math. A micro-story from a real pilot shows the sequence. A support org signs a 6-month SOW with FTE equivalence, 8 to 10. The assistant handles password resets, simple refunds, and shipping inquiries. After 3 months, backlog vanishes. The vendor celebrates success with a logo slide. Procurement triggers the efficiency capture. The BU loses approval for 3 open recs and gets a note. Savings recognized. Maintain service levels with current staffing. The team asks about spot bonuses. Finance replies, pilot benefits contribute to enterprise margin. Success becomes subtraction. The contract language shapes expectations beyond the tool's lane. SLAs for time to first response become org targets. Managers adopt them as performance thresholds. If you can't hit the contracted 4 minutes because your account's doubled, the dashboard flags you as underperforming. Meanwhile, the vendor meets the SLA. The system counts the win. The human eats the miss. There's a clause that looks harmless and cuts deep. Steady state optimization. It gives the vendor room to update models, but it also obligates the client to adapt workflows to keep realizing savings. If adoption slips, the ROI weakens and procurement escalates. Suddenly, tool usage becomes compliance. Training becomes mandatory. Your performance plan includes leverages platform features because the contract needs it, and the negotiated discount tier may depend on utilization. Pricing tiers lock the trap. Entry tier shows value. Enterprise tier ties discount to utilization targets and volume commitments. The CFO signs for the discount, and the org inherits a quota of prompts, seats, or processed items. To hit the discount, teams raise throughput. Once throughput normalizes, merit doesn't move because market. The discount lands in the P&L. The delta lands on your calendar. Security and audit annexes add another twist. To satisfy risk, approvals consolidate at higher levels. The tool drafts, your manager approves, legal signs. Signature authority climbs, while execution spreads. When promotion panels weigh signature authority, the record favors the approver, not the drafter. The contract that promised speed rewrites who gets credit. Vendors anticipate pushback. They include change management kits with talking points. Augmentation, not replacement. Focus on strategic work. Celebrate wins. They advise leaders to spotlight early adopters. Then they measure adoption and report it monthly. Low adoption threatens the ROI case. Leaders push harder. Teams comply. The spreadsheet smiles. Not every contract is blunt, but the incentives rhyme. If the business case lists labor savings first, those savings will be pursued. If the SLA measures speed and volume will dominate. If pricing references FTE equivalence, headcount plans will reflect it. The pilot doesn't just test software. It tests your ladder. The punchline is simple and hard. Once savings are locked in by contract and booked in plans, leadership incentives carry them home. Bonuses tied to EBITDA, free cash flow, and operating leverage. AI savings feed each line. When the quarter ends, the deck shows margins up, guidance lifted, and buybacks authorized. The team that hit the SLA gets a thank you. The money moves up. Executive incentives, why raises lose. Once savings are locked in, the question isn't whether leaders can share them, it's why they won't. The answer sits in compensation plans. At the top, bonuses hinge on EBITDA margin, free cash flow, total shareholder return, and cost targets. AI savings hit each lever cleanly. Every dollar not paid in raises can show up as margin expansion bigger. Buybacks, and a stronger narrative on earnings calls. Those outcomes don't just please investors, they pay executives. Boards set targets through scorecards. The scorecard assigns weight. Margin is often 30 to 40%, FCF another 20 to 30%, revenue growth and TSR split the rest. When AI drives efficiency, leaders can miss a little on growth and still overachieve on the plan by expanding margins. That overachievement translates to accelerated payouts on the bonus curve. The curve is steep. 10% above target can mean 150 to 200% of target bonus in many plans. It's not abstract. It's a spreadsheet with names next to it. Operating leverage becomes religion. If productivity rises without payroll following, operating expenses fall as a slice of revenue. That's what hits EBITDA. It also boosts cash because fewer dollars leave for comp, and less cash spent means more available for buybacks. Buybacks shrink the share count, lifting earnings per share even if absolute earnings are flat. Boards and investors reward that alchemy. Leaders learn the lesson, protect the spread. Earnings calls make the incentives public. CFOs say, we're expanding margins as AI initiatives scale, and analysts respond with price targets. The stock uptick inflates the value of equity grants. Most executive pay is equity. Options and performance shares vest based on TSR relative to peers. A tighter cost base in an AI story beats a generous raise pool that dents margin. The bonus pool at the top swells when the raise pool below stays thin. Microstory. After a successful automation rollout, a company posts record free cash flow. The board approves an additional $1 billion in buybacks and lifts the CEO's performance share payout from 100% to 175% for exceeding the margin band. The same week, employees receive a memo. Given our commitment to disciplined spending, this year's merit pool will remain aligned to market. The CEO's award is framed as stewardship. The employee's restraint is framed as partnership. Boards apply pressure through language like operating leverage and expense discipline. Compensation committees benchmark peers and insist the company keep pace. If rivals tout AI-driven margin expansion, your board demands it too. Miss the margin target by sharing gains and leadership risks being labeled undisciplined. Directors won't say don't raise pay. They'll say protect guidance. Guidance already assumed you wouldn't. Executives feel the bind personally. Their individual goals often mirror enterprise ones. Deliver cost targets, hit automation milestones, demonstrate AI adoption. HR leaders are scored on maintaining comp-to-revenue ratios. COO scorecards include productivity per FTE. CIOs and CTOs are measured on automation delivered. Nobody gets points for broad merit increases. Spot bonuses for heroes, sure. Systemic sharing, no line item. Culture follows incentives. Senior leaders defend the model because it secures their payouts and perceived credibility with the street. They repeat the phrases that keep the plan intact. We're funding growth. We're maintaining flexibility. We're preserving jobs. They're not lying. They're prioritizing. The structure pays them to. Buybacks complete the loop. Convert AI savings into repurchases and you get two wins: financial optics and control. EPS climbs faster, and the company can offset dilution from equity comp irony. The same savings withheld from raises help cover the equity granted to those making the withholding decisions. It isn't conspiracy. It's arithmetic. Microstory: a director sent a note to managers after a record quarter. Given our operating leverage progress, we must be consistent. Raise pool constrained to 3%. The same slide deck showed a $3 billion repurchase authorization. In the Q&A, an analyst asked about wage inflation risk. The CFO answered, "We're comfortable that productivity offsets pressure." The word offsets did the work of 1,000 salaries. One more twist sits in risk. Executives know that once you lift pay structurally, you don't easily reverse it. Markets punish reversals, so they prefer variable rewards, equity upside, one-time bonuses, recognition, over base adjustments. Raises become the last resort to prevent attrition in hard-to-replace lanes. Everyone else lives in market-aligned bands widened to absorb lift. If someone pushes back, why not share the gains? Leaders point to commitments they can't unmake. SLAs that require adoption, ROI booked in plans, guidance given to investors, and board-approved targets. The system frames generosity as deviation. Deviations require explanations. Explanations risk credibility. Credibility risks valuation. Valuation risks equity. Equity risks compensation. This isn't about villainy. It's about a machine with inputs and outputs. Feed it AI-enabled productivity, and it spins margin, cash, and stock. The cogs that distribute surplus downward are smaller and weaker than the gears that push it up. Until you change the gearing, how bonuses are weighted, how buybacks are prioritized, how contracts define value, raises lose by design. And when you challenge the design, the metrics can turn on you. The retaliation of metrics. Push back, and the system doesn't argue, it measures. The first sign is a flag you can't see yet: underutilization. Adoption dashboards show who isn't using prompts enough, who rejects too many AI suggestions, who takes too long between draft and send. Enablement calls it a nudge. Finance calls it risk to the ROI case. Your manager gets the alert before you do. Compliance replaces coaching. Tool usage becomes a policy line. Leverage platform features on all eligible work. Miss the checkbox and your quarterly check-in adds a development area. Miss it twice and you're on a plan. The plan has a friendlier name now: Enablement Plan. But the gates are strict. Cut handle time by 15%, lift tool adoption to 90%, hit SLA adherence weekly. You don't debate methodology, you upload screenshots. Stretch goals refresh faster than training does. Baseline creep ratchets every quarter. 5 minutes to 4, 4 to 3:30, because the vendor updated a model. Teams that question feasibility get a playbook link. Managers are graded on adoption, so they push. The reward for hitting a stretch is a new stretch. Miss one and the narrative shifts. Inconsistent pace, change resistance, needs higher leverage. Microstory: Kai, a senior agent, held a fragile enterprise account. The assistant misclassified an urgent ticket. He overrode it and spent an hour on the phone. The SLA for first response slipped from 4 minutes to 9. His quarterly review cited a pattern of underutilization and SLA variance. He showed the retention email from the client. The dashboard didn't score retention. The plan required adoption. Team dashboards gamify compliance. Leaderboards rank prompt diversity, assist acceptance, cycle speed. Green badges for power users. Yellow for on track. Red for coaching needed. Nobody wants to be red on a screen that's shared in stand-ups. Peer pressure does what policy can't: normalize the ceiling. Work that doesn't translate into green turns invisible. Green work becomes all work. Unknown to you, a second layer watches workflow friction. If you escalate too many cases to legal, the metric flags bottleneck behavior. If you send tickets back to engineering, it's handoff inflation. The message lands: keep it in lane and keep it fast. Edge cases multiply as standard cases disappear, but the targets don't bend for complexity. The retaliation is subtle. Complex judgment gets treated as delay. The language softens as the screws tighten. We want to support you. Let's remove blockers. Here are best practices from top performers. Each sentence arrives with a graph. The graph sits next to your rating. Ratings sit next to comp. The straight line between the three does the discipline without anyone raising their voice. Microstory. Marin refused to paste customer emails into a generative editor because of privacy concerns. She drafted by hand, copy scrubbed, and logged minimal assist usage. The platform flagged her as a low adopter. Her manager added a goal. Demonstrates consistent leverage of platform features. 2 months later, security approved a safer workflow. Her review had already closed. The plan remained. Quiet firing changes costume. The phrase becomes skills mismatch. Rex close with efficiency absorbed, so there's nowhere to transfer. The exit script cites role evolution and market competitiveness. You don't fail. You fail to align. Alignment is defined by a dashboard. There's a harsher edge when budgets are tight. PPs turn into enablement journeys with milestone dates. Miss a milestone and the next conversation includes HR. HR points to the data. Low adoption, missed SLA, throughput variance. Context gets logged as environmental factors. Environmental factors don't move ratings. Ratings move people. Managers feel it too. Their dashboards roll up team adoption, SLA hit rates, and variance from plan. If they shield a skeptic, their leader score dips. Shield too many and they get a note. Coaching capability risk. They learn to speak the compliance language, even when they know a metric is flattening the craft they admired. Culture bends to incentives because the board writes the scorecards. Microstory. Zahid, a product lead, pushed back on mandating AI-assisted specs for regulated workflows. He asked for a carve-out. Procurement escalated. Utilization targets tied to discount would be missed. His VP said, "We need the price. Build the exception process, but keep adoption high." The exception process took a quarter. In the meantime, Zahid's team got tagged as lagging adoption. His skip level included a reminder about change leadership. Retaliation also moves through scheduling. If the model predicts higher capacity, your calendar shrinks between calls, breaks vanish, and buffer time becomes underutilized. Ask for breathing room, and you get a wellness webinar. Ask again, and your utilization graph attends the meeting instead of you. The scariest lever is access. Badge analytics tie to presence alignment. If you're remote outside prescribed blocks or your meeting join latency spikes, the system marks engagement risk. In one audit-heavy firm, after repeated tool resistance notes, a veteran operator found his access reduced pending retraining. No termination, just an enforced pause. 2 weeks later, his duties were redistributed. The email referred to continuity. Everyone learns the new etiquette. Phrase skepticism as curiosity. Turn resistance into a question about best practices. Push accountability upward with requests for written exceptions. Log everything. If a target trades risk for speed, ask who carries the signature. If the answer is you, ask for the gate to move. If the gate doesn't move, write down the date. There's a path inside the system that limits the bite. Document value that the dashboard can't see. Retention saved, risk averted, revenue tied to judgment. Tag leaders who benefit in writing. When the enablement plan comes, point to outcomes that exceed the tool's scope. It doesn't always work, but it creates a counter record when the metrics close in. This isn't paranoia. It's plumbing. The same telemetry used to claim gains enforces them. When you push back on allocation, the system treats it as friction. And friction, in a world tuned for speed, gets sanded down. The choice isn't between using tools or not. It's between letting the metrics define your value and forcing your value into places the metrics can't ignore, where the ceiling hits fastest. Some domains feel the squeeze sooner because their work maps cleanly to the metrics leaders bought. Frontlines get it first. In customer support, generative replies and auto triage turn seasoned reps into traffic controllers. Average handle time drops, deflection rises, and headcount holds flat while ticket volume climbs. Pay bands don't move, but books of work do. The ceiling arrives early because the baseline is fully defined by SLAs the contract already set. Moderation follows the same slope. Models sweep the easy calls, spam, obvious abuse, duplicate flags, so humans live in the gray. The gray requires judgment under time pressure. The dashboard calls it exceptions. Raises don't recognize exception density, they compute throughput. As low-risk cases vanish, the work gets harder and faster, but compensation stays pegged to the blended average that no longer exists. Marketing production collapses into templates. Asset generators crank variance, headline testers run 24/7, and scheduling stacks campaigns like tiles. The human eye still matters, especially for brand tone and compliance, but reviews shrink to minutes per asset across a flood of assets. Titles shift to production supported. The path to manager used to be craft plus orchestration. Now the orchestration is a timeline view. Craft credits to the tool. The promotion waits on strategic ownership that rarely gets granted in production lanes. QA and testing feel precise pain. Agents write suites, flag regressions, and file bugs with annotation help. Coverage improves, cycle time falls, and span per tester widens. Leaders call it maturity. The side effect: fewer senior tester roles, more embedded quality, sprinkled across feature teams with assistant support. The ceiling lands at senior. Principal is reserved for systems that own risk signatures, regulated stacks, safety-critical code, audited environments. Back offices compress next. AP/AR pipelines auto-extract, match, and route. Procurement agents receive draft RFPs and vendor comparisons. Compliance teams get pre-screened filings and checklist generators. Finance ops reconciles overnight with anomaly flags. The result: bigger scope with narrower authority. Because outputs are structured and time-stamped, performance collapses to cycle time and error rate. If both improve, leaders conclude the role demands less. Raises anchor to that conclusion. Early white-collar casualties cluster in analysts, coordinators, and specialists, roles defined by synthesis and repeatable deliverables. A sales analyst who once built territory plans now verifies the assistant's plan and manages exceptions. A coordinator who once chased documents now monitors a queue and unblocks edge cases. Specialists who owned a slice of craft now curate best practices and enforce consistency. The ceiling is baked into curation. Ownership sits elsewhere. Layered arbitrage speeds the compression. Nearshore teams plus tools outcompete local comp expectations. Leaders restructure follow-the-sun cues, so the assistant hands off clean packets across time zones. Benchmarks adjust to the blended cost. When market data returns with lower, AI-adjusted rates, bands flatten earliest in these functions. The external benchmark becomes the internal excuse. We're aligned to market. Microstory: a content team rolled out an assistive writer that produced usable first drafts. Editors shifted from drafting to triage, then to batch review. The publisher relabeled roles as production editors. 3 months later, headcount dropped by attrition. The memo said, "We can scale output with existing staff." The team lead asked for senior seats to recognize judgment on brand risk. Finance replied, "Strategic decisions remain with marketing leadership." The latter ended at senior editor. Where else does it hit fast? Anywhere the output can be counted, sliced, and promised in a contract. Claims processing, benefits administration, loan operations, each built on forms, thresholds, and timelines. AI eats the front 60 to 80%, leaving humans to handle contested, messy, or regulated pieces. Those pieces demand judgment and empathy. The system pays for speed. External benchmarks follow the tooling curve. Compensation surveys report falling comp-to-output ratios as wins. HR brings those charts to calibration. Over time, the surveys become self-fulfilling. Companies cut or hold flat. Surveys record lower medians. Companies point to medians to justify restraint. The first movers create the curve. The rest ride it, citing market alignment. Some frontlines also hit culture headwinds that make arguing value harder. Support and moderation are often seen as cost centers. When they post amazing efficiency gains, the reward is budget discipline, not celebration. The internal story says we reinvest in growth areas. Growth areas turn out to be more tooling, not more people. People who carried the transformation watch the surplus move upstairs. Back office roles meet a different script: professionalization. Leaders say the function is maturing into platform governance and vendor management. That shift can unlock senior roles, just not many. One director can govern a large stack. The team below becomes operators of workflows. Operators sit in wide bands designed to absorb uplift without promotions. It hits fastest where assistable equals auditable. If compliance can prove speed and accuracy gains, the budget locks those gains as the new floor. If finance can show cycle time compression, the plan assumes it forever. Reversals are treated as failure, not variance. That's why the ceiling descends quickly in these lanes, because retreating from the new baseline isn't allowed. There's also the halo of career acceleration without runway. Early career hires get access to tools that let them produce mid-level output fast. They're praised, and then told they're not yet strategic. The rung that teaches strategy is gone. After 2 cycles of expanded scope, frustration sets in. Some leave. The ones who stay become the steady middle the system relies on and underpays. Notice the asymmetry of credentials. If a domain can't claim accountable signatures or revenue ownership, it absorbs more with less say. That's the common thread across the fast-hit zones. The fix isn't working harder inside the same metrics. It's shifting where the metrics point, to risk, revenue, and signatures that the system can't route around. And there are places where that leverage still exists. Fault lines, when the ceiling cracks. Not every ceiling holds. There are fault lines, places where accountability, revenue, or scarcity rewires the math. Start with signatures. In domains where a human signs their name on risk, legal, audit, medical, safety, the system can't fully decouple output from authority. The tool can draft, flag, and summarize. It can't carry liability. That signature becomes leverage. In legal, redliners accelerate first pass, but counsel still owns final judgment. If your name goes on a contract, you can price that responsibility. Teams that standardized, who signs what saw something rare, a premium for accountable sign-off. The assistant raised throughput. The market raised the value of the signature. When companies tried to hold base pay flat, senior counsel walked. Retention packages followed. The crack widened into a lane. Audit showed the same pattern. Pre-screeners handled routine ticks and ties. Auditors defined assertions that require human verification and logged signers to a register. When regulators asked who was accountable, names, not dashboards, answered. That list protected pay. It also restored ladders. You could move from preparer to reviewer to signer because the checkpoints were contractual, not just cultural. Revenue is another fault line, if you can prove lift beyond the AI baseline. Sales reps whose books grew solely because routing got sharper didn't gain leverage. But reps who tied personal playbooks to measurable expansion that beat the model's forecast could defend compensation. The trick was attribution. If the dashboard already credited assist influence, you had to tag deals with moments the tool didn't touch, cross-sell architecture, executive relationships, risk concessions. When those moments closed dollars, leaders fought to keep you. Money speaks louder than SLAs. Scarcity still matters. People who own critical data pipelines or systems knowledge that can't be swapped overnight have bargaining power if they consolidate that ownership into explicit responsibilities. It's not about hoarding. It's about formalizing. Runbooks under your name, access controls tied to your role, change windows requiring your approval. When something breaks at 2 a.m., the person who fixes it writes their comp story in daylight. Cross-domain synthesis is slower to automate. Tools sprint inside narrow lanes. They stumble when work spans law, finance, product, and risk. People who stitch those seams can force the system to recognize a different kind of throughput, resolved ambiguity. That work is messy to measure, so you translate it into risk avoided or revenue unlocked. 2-week delay averted, $1.2 million preserved, beats attended 6 meetings. Then there's collective power. Individual negotiation works at the edges. Groups change terms. In some shops, employees formed comp committees that reviewed band placement patterns, flagged AI-adjusted leveling, and demanded disclosure of percent in band alongside ranges. Even where that didn't lead to immediate raises, it created a paper trail that made restraint costly to defend. In others, workers pushed for Gainsharing on automation ROI. If a unit booked a 20% cycle time reduction, a slice funded bonuses before buybacks. One city ordinance forced companies to report automation impact and share gains in pilot programs. The pilots weren't perfect. They proved a point. Allocation can be legislated. MicroStory, an internal audit team, reframed their charter. They mapped every control where an AI tool touched a process and documented the residual risk that only a human could assess. They negotiated scope signature clauses. If they signed off on residual risk, they received a premium. 6 months later, When procurement touted another throughput tool, finance tried to roll the premium back. The auditors pulled the clause. The rollback died. Their band didn't widen, their pay did. Another crack opened where vendors met regulators. In healthcare, a hospital adopted an AI scribe. Doctors saved minutes per note, but clinical decisions still rode on physician judgment. The hospital tried to flatten compensation for residents, citing documentation burden reduced. Attendings pushed back with credentialed accountability and malpractice exposure. The compromise: invest in the scribe, maintain physician differentials, and add a small gain share tied to reduced coding errors. The tool paid the people whose license carried the risk. Scarcity can be built. In product, a lead who owned the customer dataset, how it was gathered, cleaned, governed, could tie their role to privacy obligations and revenue experiments. They wrote data contracts with legal, negotiated access with compliance, and became the person who could say yes or no. When bands widened, their signature authority kept them from being washed into the middle. Cross-domain synthesis also shows up in crisis. When a regulatory change hit, a team that could translate law into code into workflow turned into the bottleneck everyone needed. They documented outcomes in dollars and risk, then turned that into a leveling packet. The promotion landed because the business couldn't move without them. Scarcity wasn't secrecy, it was service recorded. Collective moves reached beyond payroll. Some groups negotiated telemetry limits. Adoption metrics could be used for training, not discipline, unless tied to outcomes. Others required written exceptions for stretch baselines, making it harder to ratchet without consent. A few pursued collective data rights, asking for transparency into how their prompts and outputs trained vendor models. That didn't rewrite comp, but it changed leverage in vendor renewals and procurement negotiations. If your usage data powers the tool's value, you can ask for a share. These cracks aren't loopholes. They're pressure points where the story meets accountability. If you can sign, sell, own, or synthesize across systems faster than the dashboard can flatten you, the ceiling bends. If you can't, you map where those levers live and move toward them. The tools aren't going away. The allocation doesn't fix itself. The counterplay starts by finding the cracks and then running straight at them. The Worker Counter-Playbook. You can't fix the machine alone, but you can change how it counts you. Start by capturing your delta. Before a tool lands, archive your metrics. Cycle times, error rates, win rates, revenue per account, renewal saves, audit findings. After rollout, measure again, but under your name. Not team throughput, your throughput. Tag artifacts with authorship. Comments in PRs, initials on playbooks, revision history on specs, deal memos with your notes. When dashboards credit platform assist, you carry a parallel ledger that shows lift tied to your actions, not just the tool's baseline. Tie your contributions to money or risk, not tasks. Reframe outputs and outcomes. Dollars retained, dollars expanded, penalties avoided, delays prevented. Translate saved minutes into saved revenue. If a churn risk stayed because you negotiated a concession, document the value and who signed off. If a regulatory filing avoided a fine, attach the statute and the potential exposure. Your review shouldn't read closed 120 tickets. It should read preserved $480,000 ARR across 4 at-risk accounts, eliminated $250,000 audit exposure through control redesign. Negotiate scope shielding in writing. If the tool inflates volume, define what you won't do so what matters doesn't fragment. Draft a scope note with your manager. Which accounts you own, which approvals require your signature, which emergencies preempt metrics. Add a line, AI-generated work products reviewed under my license. If they want the speed of the tool with the safety of your name, the signature must travel with compensation. Without that clause, your judgment gets rented for free. Build scarcity by owning pipes, not just endpoints. Learn where data originates, how it's cleaned, who can approve schema changes, which logs auditors trust. Offer to maintain the runbooks and the access controls. Don't hoard, formalize. The goal is to be necessary without being opaque. When the system needs a change window, you schedule it. When a vendor asks for new permissions, they route through you. Scarcity lives in accountable ownership, not secrecy. Make your value legible across functions. Cross-domain synthesis is hard to measure, so translate it into 2 currencies leaders can't ignore: revenue and risk. Start writing issue-to-impact briefs: problem, stakes, options, decision, outcome. Keep them short and specific. Send them to the stakeholders who benefit. Those emails become receipts. When calibration arrives, you have a stack of cross-functional wins with named beneficiaries who can attest under pressure. Use the system's love of documentation against its excesses. If a target trades safety for speed, ask for the exception in writing. Confirm acceptance of X risk to meet Y SLA. If leadership won't sign, the target moves. If they do, the signature becomes leverage. Either way, you're not carrying silent liability. This is how auditors created scoped signature premiums. It works in product, support, and finance ops too. Collective moves amplify individual leverage. Spin up a comp committee, informal first. Compare band placements, percent in band, and leveling narratives. Patterns surface quickly. AI-adjusted leveling, widened bands, forced distributions. Draft a petition that asks for 3 disclosures: band placement percentiles, exception thresholds for exceeds, and vacancy capture totals by org. You're not demanding raises. You're demanding transparency that changes negotiations. Even partial disclosures create paper trails that make restraint costlier. Push for Gainsharing where automation ROI is explicit. If a unit books a 20% cycle time reduction, propose a formula that pays out a slice to the team before buybacks. Keep it simple, flat dollar per head, capped, tied to realized savings in your cost center. Leaders will argue complexity. Offer a pilot. If they claim we can't measure, point to the contract's SLAs. If procurement can measure to clawback, finance can measure to share. Microstory, a CX team mapped pre- and post-assist metrics, proving a 28% reduction in handle time and a 12-point CSAT lift. They drafted a 1-page gain share. 10% of documented labor savings returned as quarterly bonuses, capped at $2,500 per head. Their VP said no. They circulated the proposal to legal and compliance, whose teams relied on CX for escalations. Legal signed a support letter citing reduced dispute exposure. The CFO agreed to a 2-quarter pilot. Burnout dropped. Attrition slowed. The pilot became policy for 3 units. Use vendor renewals as a lever. Ask for a seat at the table with procurement. Bring the contract's FTE math. Request a clause tying a portion of realized savings to employee bonuses or training budgets you control. Vendors won't love it. Some will trade a small rebate pool labeled adoption incentives or earned credit. That pool can be your gain share. If leaders refuse, log the refusal against the public people first. Narrative. Inconsistent stories create pressure later. Protect your telemetry. Negotiate that adoption metrics inform training, not discipline, unless tied to outcomes. Push for time-box baselines. No baseline ratchet without joint review. Ask HR to codify that tool non-usage requires context review before it affects ratings. These won't stop every retaliation, but they slow the reflex to turn a dashboard into a verdict. When you ask for money, anchor to signatures, revenue, or irreplaceability. I want to raise meets market. I sign off on X risk. I own Y revenue delta. Or I am the approver for Z system, meets retention calculus. If base won't move, trade for scope, signature authority, named ownership, written exception rights. Those convert into money later. They also block quiet deleveling. Microstory, Sanaa, a product operator, wrote the runbooks that bridged legal rules and workflow. During renewal, she requested scope signature, over regulatory changes, and a clause that her approval was required for rollout. Leadership granted the scope without comp. 2 months later, a change she blocked prevented a privacy incident. She documented avoided fines and reputational damage, then reopened comp with the clause attached. Finance approved a mid-cycle adjustment, citing retention risk in critical control. Finally, keep receipts and allies. Share wins up and sideways. Build coalitions with legal, risk, and revenue. They can validate outcomes that beat the tool's bar. The ceiling is engineered. Your playbook isn't rebellion. It's re-engineering your place inside it so the system has to see you and pay you on your terms. The policy and norms front. Tactics help, but rules set the field. If the ceiling is engineered in contracts and compensation plans, then policy and norms are the tools that can raise it. Start with transparency that actually informs decisions. Pay ranges are theater without band placement. Real transparency means disclosing where people sit inside the band, how leveling decisions are made, and which exceptions were granted. Post the percent in band on comp statements. Add leveling rationales employees can challenge. When people see the placement, they can negotiate. When they can't, the system wins by default. Ban productivity capture without compensation sharing. If a unit books automation gains, a portion should fund employees before it funds buybacks. Call it Gainsharing, profit sharing, or automation dividends. The label matters less than the rule. The formula can be simple. Take documented labor savings from AI initiatives, carve out a fixed slice for bonuses in the impacted cost center, and pay it quarterly. Companies already measure savings to justify software. They can measure to share them. Tie Gainsharing to the same SLAs vendors sign. If support beat handle time targets by 25%, route a share of the modeled labor savings to the team. If finance closed the books 2 days faster, link a bonus to the hours that were eliminated. Using the vendor's math limits debate. The spreadsheet that squeezes can also pay. Require impact disclosures. Just as companies report climate risk and cybersecurity posture, they should report automation effects to investors and employees. Headcount reduced by attrition, roles reclassified with AI support, merit pool adjustments, and vacancy capture totals. Publish those numbers with board oversight. The act of disclosure pressures allocation. Investors can still applaud margins. They'll now see what funded them. Protect worker data rights over telemetry. If adoption metrics govern pay and employment, workers deserve a say in how those metrics are collected, used, and retained. Limit telemetry to what's necessary. Prohibit using raw adoption data for discipline without outcome context. Timebox baseline ratchets. Mandate human review for any adverse action premised on tool usage. These aren't tech constraints, they're governance norms. Codify no secret yardsticks. If expectations rise because a tool improved, the change should be announced, justified, and time-boxed. Put a cooling-off period between a model upgrade and a new baseline. Require a joint review with affected teams and risk owners before ratcheting. If leadership wants speed, leadership signs the risk. Written signatures move behavior more than slogans do. Outlaw forced distributions that ignore uplift. If tools raise average output, the performance curve should move with it. Fixing the distribution while raising the bar converts gains into denial. Replace fixed curves with target ranges and evidence-based calibration. Require documentation when exceeds is capped below demonstrated performance. If a business can't fund raises, let the record show it, not pretend meets is truth. Constrain vacancy capture. When a role is eliminated through efficiency absorbed, publish the dollar amount captured and the destination account, debt, capex, buybacks, or compensation. Set a rule, A. Set percentage of vacancy capture from automation returns to the impacted teams as bonuses or training controlled by employees. Publish exceptions. Sunlight narrows the gap between the press release and the plan. Create right-to-appeal panels for AI-linked ratings. If adoption or SLA metrics drive a rating drop, employees can appeal with outcome evidence, revenue saved, risk averted, regulated exceptions. Panels include cross-functional peers, not just HR and the manager's chain. The point isn't to spike discipline. It's to force the system to consider value the dashboard missed. Public policy can set the frame. Cities and regulators have already experimented with algorithmic accountability in hiring and surveillance. Extend that logic to workplace telemetry. Require companies above a size threshold to conduct and publish automation impact assessments. Which roles changed, what savings were claimed, how gains were shared, and what retraining was funded. If a firm touts augmented workers, ask them to show where the augmentation paid the workers. Pilot automation gainshare ordinances. A city could require firms receiving public contracts to implement gainsharing on AI projects tied to those contracts. Documented savings split between taxpayers and employees before executive incentives. It won't solve every imbalance, but it proves the mechanism at scale. Once workers see it work, they'll ask for it elsewhere. Normalize compensation committees inside companies, not board committees, employee ones. Give them data access under NDA. Ban distributions, percent in band, vacancy capture, and AI savings attribution. Their role is to flag patterns, systematic down-leveling with AI support, bands widened without offsetting increases, chronic caps on exceeds. Even advisory committees change internal politics. They create a record leaders have to answer to. Introduce a signature premium norm. If a person's name carries legal, financial, or safety risk, pay it. Make scoped signature clauses standard in leveling guides. The tools will draft and route. The signature still bears liability. When that's explicit, the market respects it. Where it isn't, people walk, and the market learns the hard way. Backstop retraining with real budgets. Upskilling is not a virtue if it's a wage cut by another name. Fund upskilling hours as paid time, not nights and weekends. Tie completion to role redesign with pay floors, not growth opportunities in place. If a company claims career acceleration, tie it to peer-reviewed promotion rates and published movement between bands. Microstory. A mid-sized city passed an ordinance requiring contractors to disclose automation impacts and implement a minimum 10% gain share on realized savings for affected teams. A regional insurer piloted the policy in claims. Cycle time fell 22%. Workers received quarterly bonuses, and a portion funded paid certification hours. Attrition eased. The company's investor deck still boasted margin expansion. Both were true. Transparency didn't kill performance. It clarified who earned it. None of this is utopian. It's accounting with different defaults. If the surplus created by AI is real, it can be measured and shared. If telemetry is powerful enough to enforce speed, it's powerful enough to enforce fairness. Policy sets the incentives. Norms make them stick. The ceiling was engineered, so it can be raised with signatures, disclosures, and gain sharing. Human stories, the cost of an invisible ceiling. Start with Maya, a mid-level parent in operations. She hits every metric, then beats them after the assistant lands. Her dashboard glows green. Childcare doesn't. Nights stretch because the saved hours become extra volume. The promotion that would fund a second sitter keeps moving. Not yet strategic. She watches a younger colleague step into interim lead while she trains them and steps out to pick up her kid before late fees. The review praises stamina. The raise buys groceries. Eli thought temporary meant 6 months. AI turned his analyst role into a permanent staging lane. He builds dashboards that once qualified him for senior. Now the tool builds first drafts, and Eli curates. Twice he's told to upskill. New prompts, new pipelines. He does. Twice the ladder shifts. Bands widen, titles stretch, and senior means influence he isn't allowed. He starts answering friends' texts at lunch. Should I leave? He's 26. Rosa is a veteran operator on a factory floor. She trains the vision model that catches defects. Overtime once paid for her mom's medication. The model gets good. Overtime dries up. Management thanks her for unlocking capacity. She asks about a bump. HR points to the Roll family. Operator, AI supported. The plant tour features her smile. The pharmacy bill waits. Denials stack into a language people learn to speak around. You hear it in kitchen chats. I'm at 47th percentile in band. I got growth opportunities again. I'm almost there. You hear it in the laughter that isn't funny. I'm the glue. The glue holds until it breaks, then gets swept into vacancy capture. The badge on the shelf says hackathon winner. The mortgage bill says due. A junior nurse loves the new scribe. Notes are cleaner, shifts feel lighter. But staffing ratios change. The lighter shift fills with more rooms. She spends less time with each patient, more time defending chart speed. When her grandmother lands in the ER, she sees her own face in the nurse rushing past. She asks for more staff. The answer is a dashboard. In a warehouse, Teo's team meets every new target. The assistant reroutes, predicts jams, optimizes picks. He used to teach new hires with patience. Now he's told to increase leverage. He stops telling stories about how to avoid ankle sprains on wet days. Metrics don't track sprains avoided. They track seconds saved. The cost isn't only money. It's pride traded for compliance, craft bent around templates, judgment compressed into exceptions. It's the quiet decision to stop caring as much, because caring doesn't clear the bar the tool set. And it's the choice to care anyway, and pay for it with sleep. The ceiling didn't appear. It was built, contracts, dashboards, incentives, so it can be rebuilt with signatures, gain sharing, and real transparency. If you want the receipts and the playbooks to protect your income, subscribe now. Watch the next episode on how buybacks turn your productivity into stock price sugar highs, and send this to a coworker before their review cycle lands. The system counts what it can, make it count.